A 90% chance of a recession. That is the prediction tonight from a top economist, Torsten Slok, painting a dire picture of Trump's trade war and the implications, saying it's pushing the U.S. economy to the brink of full-blown crisis. He writes that in just weeks, quote, the consequence will be empty shelves in U.S. stores in a few weeks and COVID-like shortages for consumers and for firms using Chinese products as intermediate goods. And the administration tonight not giving much of a reassurance when pressed on this prediction.
Are you worried about empty shelves?
Not at present. We had some great retailers. I assume they pre-ordered.
What about the millions and millions of small businesses that couldn't even pre-order? Never mind everyone else supposed to see in that, the crystal ball. Those great retailers were all just at the White House, some of the biggest ones. CEOs of Walmart, Target, and Home Depot, they warned Trump in that meeting that his tariffs could lead to product shortages and more. Barclays tonight is echoing the warnings in a memo to investors, writing, we expect a sharp slowdown and a likely U.S. recession in the coming quarters. All of it comes as tonight we're learning Jamie Dimon, the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, reportedly told investors just days ago, according to the Wall Street Journal, that a best-case scenario is a mild recession. It's a daily drumbeat of warnings now coming from people who know a lot about the economy, and it has Americans worried. Our latest poll out this afternoon finding a majority of Americans, 59%, say Trump's policies have made economic conditions in the U.S. worse, which could explain why the administration is tonight doing all it can to not talk about the economy. Moments ago, Trump signing executive orders, this time regarding truck drivers and what language they speak, saying they have to speak English. Just look at the north lawn of the White House, fitting that theme. It's covered in photos of people the administration say are illegal immigrants. That's what they want to talk about. That's the discussion they want to have. They certainly do not want to talk about the economy. Over the past 100 days, the Dow has sank nearly 4,000 points, trillions of dollars gone. According to CNBC, the S&P drop over the first 100 days of Trump's presidency is on track to be the worst 100-day performance in the stock market since Nixon. And that's clearly not something that you'd want to talk about if you were Trump.
The next Trump economic boom will begin on November 5th, 2024. It's going to be a boom like no other.
Words, of course, that now live in infamy at this moment. Tonight, the Treasury Secretary is trying to turn things around. They feel the clock. They feel the pressure. He's previewing deals.
I would guess that India would be one of the first trade deals we would sign. So watch this space.
It could come as soon as tomorrow. Who knows? They've got announcements in the morning. It's one of the many deals we're told Trump is making. But it's been very, very tough to pin the administration down on something of such a crucial nature, tariffs, the economy, a recession. How many deals are they negotiating?
We now have 18 proposals on paper that have been brought to the trade team.
Okay, 18. Who knows? I mean, sort of lick your finger and stick it in the air because Trump's number dwarfs anything the White House has put out. He told Time magazine, and I quote him, I've made 200 deals. Time responding, you made 200 deals? Trump, 100%. Now, never mind Caroline Levitt said Trump says 200. Let's just compare Trump's number of 200 to the list that he released when he announced his sweeping tariffs earlier this month in front of that board when they were all scrolling by. There were not even 200 countries on it in total. Now, and that remember that island? What's it called? So anyone here remembers that island? The island that was inhabited only by penguins. Now, one of those countries that Team Trump is continuing to say they are talking to as we speak is China.
All aspects of government are in contact with China.
China, though, keeps shutting down this claim. The Chinese embassy telling Outfront exclusively that no one from the Chinese government has spoken to the Trump administration. And all this back and forth has come as Trump has said he would slash the tariffs on China. Now, he said that without any negotiating or any talks at all, which brought to mind an episode of Seinfeld where George and Jerry were negotiating a deal with NBC for the show about nothing. So in this episode, NBC offers them $12,000, okay, for the whole show. And then this happened.
So what did we get?
$8,000.
Beautiful.
That's for the two of us.
$4,000 apiece?
Let me see if I understand this. In other words, you held out for less money.
I was wrong. You were right.
You know, the basic idea of negotiation, as I understand it, is to get your price to go up.
You're smart, I'm dumb.
You know, this is how they negotiate in the bizarro world.
Which may be the world that we're living in right now. Why is it that Seinfeld, there's always something there? Is Trump about to make the same deal as George Costanza? Elena Treen is out front live outside the White House to begin our coverage. So, Elena, we know that Scott Bessent may be speaking tomorrow before the markets open. They're under incredible pressure to announce some things. How much pressure is Trump feeling right now to get an actual trade deal on the table?
I think, of course, there's a lot of pressure, particularly when you look at some of the dismal polling numbers we saw from that new CNN poll. I mean, Americans are not confident right now that the president is delivering on his promise for this economic revival. I remember covering the president throughout his time on the campaign trail, repeatedly saying that it was going to be the golden age of America that he would usher in. But when it comes to the economy, Americans aren't feeling that. So yes, this administration is under heavy pressure to try and get a deal out on this. Now, we did hear Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent say a deal with India could come as early as this week. In my conversations, I'm told not to anticipate that would be announced tomorrow. But we are going to hear from the Treasury Secretary directly tomorrow morning, 8:30, before markets open. He'll be speaking in the briefing room, obviously taking questions from reporters who are going to be pressing him on that exact topic. What is the status of these trade deals? But Aaron, one thing that's been so striking to me is the president's tone on the economy. I am told that when he goes to Michigan tomorrow, he is going to try to go on offense on this issue. He's going to talk about tax cuts, which really we haven't heard anything about other than Bessent today telling people on Capitol Hill just moments ago, really, that he wants a tax cuts deal by July. But no one, Americans haven't had really, something to look forward to. And that's been the thing that I'm hearing behind closed doors has really been a key frustration. The president has said that he is willing, he wants Americans to be patient. He is willing for there to be some pain in the short term. But how long will they be able to endure that pain? That is really a key question. And tomorrow, that's going to be the focus. His 100th day in office, they are choosing to make it about the economy. And right now, it's really not one of the winning issues for this White House. Aaron,
of course. Thank you so much, Elena. An economy, sometimes you think something short term, it gets out of your control, and then you don't know what it is. All right, everyone's here with me. Dan, so let's just start off with Apollo's chief economist, Torsten Slok, came out, big analysis, and it's worth reading in full, but saying the probability of a recession now 90%. Which is just a stunning turnaround here in the past 6 weeks. What do you think?
I mean, look, we've talked about it. The uncertainty and this avalanche that's created, it's likely a recession. That's what's likely in the cards, because what's happening on the enterprise and what ultimately is going to happen with consumers. Because it comes down to time's not on their side. That's why they continue to talk deals. But it's a Costanza moment, because ultimately they know the card to the table is not a good deck. And that's why the reality is that the market knows that. They know they have to walk back.
And Alexis, sometimes economics is about psychology, right? So you've got the economic reality. The CNN poll, 59% of people say Trump's policy have made things worse. It's gone up. I mean, when people get scared, sometimes a recession happens.
That's exactly right. And you often don't know you're in a recession until after the fact. Technically, a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. What's really important here is that in the fourth quarter, GDP was about 2.4%. This Wednesday, our first look at first quarter GDP is going to come out. The prediction right now is 0.8%. But a lot of folks believe it's going to be negative because you're going to see a lot of distortions for the fact that people were actually stacking up inventory in advance of the tariffs. The second thing to keep in mind is the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index, which came out 2 weeks ago. That reading was the lowest reading since COVID, and the inflation predictions there took it up from 5 to 6.5%. So sentiment is absolutely not your friend right now. Add to it on Friday, you'll get the first look at the jobs data on Friday, and that will be reflective of the month of April. What is business doing?
And that shows some of this. Paul, looking at this eve of 100 days, this is your whiteboard. Dan got a whiteboard. Okay, this is your whiteboard. But this was just going through, okay, this is eve of first 100 days. Right. Okay, I want to start it with red because there's one market down. Yes. That's big, and it's down a lot, and that is ours is down 8.4%. Okay, that's the U.S. economy,
since
the U.S. market since inauguration. Yes. So basically, eve of 100 days, eve of tomorrow. Okay, and then just to pick some of the others, Canada, where the trade war is in full swing. That market is up 3.4%. I'm going off your numbers, Paul. Yep. These are the ways you track the index. Yes. Okay. UK up. Imagine a world in which this was us. 10.2. Okay. Germany, the German boom we've talked so much about. Germany, okay, 18.5 up. I mean, this is sick. Now, what about Mexico?
Mexico?
I don't expect you to remember it offhand, but Mexico, your number was 20.9%. So country, one thing stands out here.
We're outperforming Turkey.
Oh,
that's some great news.
There is a glass half full kind of guy.
That's a hickey glass half full.
As a member of the administration, what would you say to those 59% of Americans who say the president's policies are making things worse right now?
Well, I'd say the first 100 days right now, when you have a president that's driving a dramatic and historic and positive change for the country, this is like asking a group of people, how'd you like the movie? And they've seen 1/14 of it. I mean, his presidency is going to be over 1,400 days long. We're 100 days in, and President Trump is driving enormous change and trying to realign America's standing in the world when it comes to trade. He's certainly delivered on his promise in terms of the border, and he's delivering hard on a number of other things he's talking about in terms of restructuring the size and impact of government, making great progress on balancing the budget. And of course, what he's doing on energy is fantastic in terms of bringing energy back as a priority for this country.
So you're essentially saying that Americans need to keep watching.
Well, I think the smart money is on America in the long term, and I think that's why you're seeing records amount of both capital from the U.S. and foreign direct investment flowing to the United States, trillions of dollars that people that want to invest in this country because they know that he's on a path towards lower regulation, lower taxes, and more fair world trade. Those things are all super positive for our economy going forward, and every American is going to benefit from that.
But you're one of his key surrogates who's argued the economy helped him win the election. This is an unusual place for him to be in, where he's getting bad numbers on the economy. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because he had the courage to take on this incredible imbalance that we have. The U.S. had the most open economy in the world, the largest economy in the world, and even our allies had their economies closed to us. And so we really had fundamentally unfair and unbalanced trade, and he's trying to rectify that. And right now, the White House, at record speed, is engaged in 35 different bilateral country-to-country, one-on-one trade deals. And every single one of those, the U.S. is going to come out better than where we started, because the premise here is that none of these deals are going to be worse than the U.S. than where we were before. It's only getting better from here.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because obviously, I mean, tariffs is one thing he made very clear on the campaign trail he was going to do. Maybe people didn't believe him. But he wrote yesterday that many people's income taxes will be substantially reduced, maybe even completely eliminated once the revenue from the tariffs comes in. But if you're making deals with countries and you're going to lower those tariffs, how are you going to have the revenue to cover people's income taxes?
Well, there is going to be revenue two ways. One, in terms of just increased trade, because if we have markets that are open to U.S. company and more things that are built here, that's a positive for America, because income taxes are one form of tax, but there's also many other forms of revenue that the government can generate. And so I think—
Like what?
Well, certainly take a look at Interior. Under the Biden administration, revenue from using the balance sheet of America, the land and the resources that we have both onshore and offshore, were going down. And we have a tremendous opportunity through leasing of land for minerals, getting ourselves back into mining. The war on mining is over with President Trump. The war on timber is over under President Trump. The war on oil and gas is over. All this thing is over, and now we're seeing investment coming back. And in those cases, those companies will buy a lease, they write a check to the federal government, and then when they develop that resource, they pay a royalty.
But that's not the argument he's making here. He's saying that the tariffs will generate so much revenue that people in a certain income level will not have to pay taxes. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the tariffs would have to be 4 times what they are now to actually make up for that. I think some people look at that and say the math does not add up.
Well, I think when you're taking a look at the the opportunity that we have to balance trade and companies that have had free access to our market, even at the 10% level, this is producing billions of dollars a day for America if those stay in place. If they don't stay in place, because we end up with free and fair trade, we know that America can compete with anyone. And if we start building and manufacturing products here, as opposed to outsourcing that to around the world, that's going to strengthen every community, create more high-paying jobs. And with the advent of AI coming, that's another thing where we've got to have the energy to be able to produce the electricity to win the AI arms race. President Trump very focused on that.
You're not the Treasury Secretary or Peter Navarro, the trade advisor, but do you know of any trade agreements that they are close to actually closing in on, and not just top lines, a memorandum of understanding?
Well, I know that they're very focused in taking a look at those 35 who is ready to come to the table. The top half of those 35 have been broken into 3 tiers, and these folks are working around the clock over the weekends to get trade deals. And I think for President Trump, you're going to see one trade deal after another announced. When you start walking through 100 announcements with 100 different countries, and every single one of those we end up with a better trade deal than we have right now. I mean, how can anybody say that's not a good deal for this country? But again, the courage to actually take on a completely unfair global trading system. It takes, President Trump was courageous in his first term. Now he's fearless this time around, and he's fearless in fighting for every American, because these things will benefit our economy and will benefit every American.
I mean, he's arguing that he's made 200 trade deals so far.
Well, there is all kinds of countries, that are showing up at the doorstep because they understand that America is serious about leveling the trade issues right now.
Can I ask you, because you mentioned if the tariffs stay in place, what that would look like, the revenue that you believe it could generate. Tonight, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that he's expected to peel back some of the tariffs on automakers. So essentially, they're not paying tariffs on top of other tariffs if it's on steel and aluminum imports. Certainly a relief to those automakers. But I wonder, those people obviously have a direct line to the West Wing. So does Tim Cook of Apple. What do you say to small business owners who look at that and say, the big companies are getting a break, but we, because we're small businesses, are not?
Well, I don't know that that's that's an assumption that I can't, a hypothetical I can't agree with, because I know that, again, if a small retailer is buying goods and selling goods that is made in the United States, tariffs aren't part of their life. There are no tariffs on products made in the United States. If you're a large retailer and you're getting a lot of your products made in China, yeah, you're going to have to deal with a different cost structure.
But some small businesses get parts of products that they make from overseas and whatnot, and so the tariffs are affecting them. We've seen this with people who make strollers or bicycles, for example.
Well, I think every American now, during COVID, they had their first understanding that supply chains matter and what countries they come from. And now, as we have this discussion about, and people starting to realize how unfair the trade balance has been, that they're starting to understand that maybe it would be a good thing that if we were actually making things in America, and that's a positive thing. Positive things for everybody, including small business on Main Street.
Well, as a former businessman, I wonder, do you get calls from old friends and acquaintances asking for help with the president?
Well, absolutely. I think that as someone who's been involved in business my whole life, we're hearing from a lot of different sectors. And of course, every sector depends on energy. President Trump has wisely kept energy out of all of these tariff discussions because he knows that both for us to be able to sell energy to our friends and allies, stop our adversaries from funding those wars against us, whether it's Russia funding their war against Ukraine or whether it's Iran funding 24 terror groups, all of them doing that. Because the Biden administration was like, we're going to shut down U.S. energy. We're going to buy our energy from our adversaries. That was a policy that is, any country that does not have their own energy security has no national security. President Trump is putting us back on a path where part of the core affordability of any industry is we've got to have low-cost energy in this country. And one way you do that is increase supply. And whether it's minerals, whether it's electricity, whether it's liquid fuels, we're on the path right now. And what has been accomplished in the first 100 days, permitting, taking 2-year permitting, bringing it down to 1 month, bringing back baseload electricity in this country.
Yeah, we did see oil production at an all-time high under President Biden. He didn't tout it that often, but Secretary Burgum...
Well, he did because of the permitting that happened under President Trump. I mean, the all-time record oil production under Biden was because of Trump It was in spite of Biden. I was running a state that was a natural resources state, and we were fighting the federal government. Federal government wasn't even holding the legally required lease sales during the Biden administration. First president since Harry Truman was Biden that didn't hold those lease sales. So for them to take credit, that was all because...
Well, they didn't take credit because it wasn't very popular with their voters. Secretary Burgum.
Affordable electricity is popular with everyone, and America needs to make sure we don't lose the thing. I mean, take a look what's happening in Europe right now with this 60 million people in a brownout blackout. We came very close to that happening in America because the Biden administration policy so dangerously eroded baseload in favor of having unreliable intermittent sources. And so we're just fortunate that we're not where Europe is right now, and we don't want to go there. Germany spent $500 billion to go chase a green path. And they ended up with electricity that cost 3 times as much, and they're producing 20% less.
Secretary Doug Burgum, always great to have you. Thanks for joining us on set tonight.
Great to be here.
Joining us to drill down on the rest of the new CNN polling and more generally size out the administration going to the 100th day. CNN's Harry Enton, also CNN political commentators Elizabeth Farr Griffin and David Axelrod. So, David, according to the Journal, the president is expected to back down on some of the tariffs. Will it hurt? I mean, for negotiating, I mean, what do you think the viewpoint is around the world of this president and his actual negotiating skills on trade deals?
Well, pretty obviously, the world is baffled, as is the business community. The economy has been impacted by that. The markets have reacted to that. But Anderson, the thing that people most voted for Donald Trump to do was to reduce costs. These tariffs are going to raise costs, and automobiles are a big component of that. So it's not surprising to me that he has to bail out of this one. It's so interesting to me when you look back at the Biden administration and you look back at polling, and Harry Enton can speak to this. You look back to that withdrawal from Afghanistan, that shambolic withdrawal from Afghanistan, and Biden's numbers took a big hit and they never recovered. And you wonder whether April 2nd, what he called Liberation Day, but for the markets was kind of Incineration Day. We wonder whether you look back at that, and what you find is that was the beginning of the end, that he never recovers, because these economic numbers are devastating. So I see this as a kind of a small bailout from the position he put himself in, but there's so much more to it, and I'm not sure there's a way out for him.
Yeah, Alyssa, is this now just chaos followed by bluster?
I think that the president is looking for an elegant off-ramp because this was disastrous. It was received horribly, this Liberation Day announcement around tariffs, by the entire business community. Now you have the polling that backs it. He can't turn on Fox News and not see that his numbers are underwater on the 2 things he was elected on, the economy and addressing immigration. So I think that he's looking for targeted ways to be able to claim victory while actually rolling back his own policies here. But one area that I think is also interesting is immigration, which that was a key issue that he won this election on. And now that the numbers are underwater on immigration is stunning. And what I just have a hard time with is folks around him need to be telling him the message is clear. He has effectively secured the border. The border crisis is over, but he's not talking about that. Instead, they're talking about deportations that have bypassed due process, that have made mistakes in people that they've deported, putting up signs on the White House lawn about all the illegal immigrants that they're going to deport, and it's missing the message. All the American people wanted was, we don't want 500,000 people coming across the border, and we want the cost of living to go down. Like, get back to the basics, and you could change these numbers.
Harry, what does the polling say right now?
No, I mean, we're talking about tariffs, we're talking about the economy, and it's just a disaster. I mean, that's the only real word you can use to describe it. I mean, take a look at Trump's economic approval rating now versus 100 days in to his first term, and what we see is it's 10 points lower, right? The economy was a strength for him during his first term. Now it is a weakness. Now it is dragging him down, and we talk about history, right, and historic numbers. I look back for every single president since Jimmy Carter in 1977, the lowest economic approval rating through 100 days belongs now to Donald John Trump. And more than that, tariffs are also related to foreign affairs, right? Your relationships with other countries. So take a look at Donald Trump's approval rating when it comes to foreign affairs. You see, again, lower than the first term. You see it underwater, 39%. And again, that is the lowest on record all the way back since James Earl Carter in 1977 when we began polling that. And I love to see the smile when I refer to him as James Earl Carter.
No, it's that you're shouting at us.
I guess I'm so excited.
1900s.
I'm just so excited. Numbers get me excited.
I know they do. I know. That's why we love you.
Thank you, my friend.
So, David, President Trump's the economic approval ratings took a hit after the tariffs announcement. Are Democrats, where are they on this? I mean, they are doing enough to make the most of this. Do they have answers for any of this?
Well, look, I kind of think it's taking care of itself right now. I agree with Senator Klobuchar. I think Democrats have a lot of work to do to figure out why they became associated with the status quo and lost to Donald Trump, who wasn't that popular a figure when he got elected. They have work to do to talk about the future, and after this teardown, what do they propose to build? But in the short term, he's destroying himself. And we should point out that there's an election tonight, apropos to what Harry said, in Canada, in which the Liberal Party of Canada very likely will win. We'll see what the result is, but they have a great chance. They were way behind before Trump basically declared economic warfare on Canada, and the Prime Minister up there, Mark Carney, used that issue to leverage his way back into the race. So that's one election, that victory that Donald Trump can justly claim credit for. I'm not sure that he's going to, though.
Well, also, Alyssa, to David's point, I mean, he's unified countries around the world against us, but not this country.
The Canada one really doesn't make sense to me. I mean, this is kind of a side point in all of it, but were it to become a 51st state, which of course is not happening, you'd be importing a massive, highly progressive population to the United States, which would basically ensure that Republicans aren't elected again anytime soon. But listen, I think that there's going to be a lot of comparisons to the first Trump term and the second Trump term. And there were a lot of flaws in the first, and there's going to be a lot of flaws in this one. But I'll be curious to see what advisors actually stand the test of time after this 100 days. You see some of these folks like Peter Navarro, who I think put some information in front of the president that was not ready for prime time, that got him into this place that had the markets open close, the lowest they had since the 1930s. That's someone who I think there's going to need to be a question around, should that be who we're listening to, or do we need to bring new voices in? And he's still got some time to do that.
Yeah, David?
Anderson, I know we probably have to run, but I just want to say the people who are really on the bubble here are Republicans. If you're Tom Tillis, a senator from North Carolina, if you're Susan Collins and you're running for re-election, if you're any of those Republicans in swing House districts, you're looking at these numbers and you're saying, what do I do here? I am trapped. So they're the ones who must be really anxious tonight.
Harry, what other numbers?
I mean, look, we've been talking about it. Donald Trump's overall approval rating, when you put it all together, is the worst on record at this point through 100 days. And the fact is, the only one who's anywhere close to Donald Trump was him in his first term at 44%. He's a dozen points behind Joe Biden, 24 points basically behind Barack Obama and George W. Bush. The bottom line is what Donald Trump is doing right now is not working in the minds of the American people. And I can guarantee you this. If Donald Trump's approval rating is 41% come November of 2026, you can kiss goodbye that House majority for the Republicans, and there's a decent chance as well they could blow the Senate as well, which is something I never thought could possibly happen given the map.
I like that you actually went through on the actual kiss.
Alyssa, everyone, you're all so beautiful.
President Trump's reliable ratings for his handling of the economy are taking a major hit. A brand new CNN poll shows that 59% of the American people now say President Trump's policies have worsened economic conditions in the country, an 8% increase from just last month. And this is before the federal job cuts and impact of Trump tariffs kick in. CNN's Harry Enten is at the Magic Wall to explain for us the reasons behind this and more. And Harry, President Trump usually rates really, really well on this. His latest approval rating on the economy is on par with the worst numbers that former President Biden saw during his presidency.
Oh, I mean, I think the statistical definition of what the numbers look like in our new CNN poll is yuck, or maybe ooh. We can start off exactly where you were pointing out, right, in terms of the policies worsening the U.S. economy. In March, it was 51%. And now, look at this, up to 59%. He is going in the wrong direction, on this. And this speaks to the overall state of the economy, right, Jake? What are we talking about here? We're talking about rate the U.S. economic conditions as poor. As you were mentioning, or at least hinting at, Donald Trump was elected to fix the economy. But yet, when it comes to rating the U.S. economic conditions as poor, a year ago when Joe Biden was president, it was 70%. You flip forward to now, it's 71%. That's within the margin of error. It's actually a point worse. So what we're seeing here is that Donald Trump is, in fact, not fixing what the American people put him in charge to fix, as basically the same percentage of the American public rate the U.S. economy as poor. Disgusting is, I think, another way to put it.
What are Americans increasingly concerned about right now?
Yeah, okay, so you see these two numbers being the same, but it turns out their concerns on the economy are not exactly what they were. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look here. Family's top economic problem. Say a government policy is the top economic problem for their family. Look here, in June of 2024, it was 10%. In April of 2025, look at this, it's 21%, more than double. Well, what government policy might have been instituted during the Trump presidency to make this percentage double? Well, maybe it was tariffs. Maybe it was tariffs. And what do we see? Tariff policies. Trump is, of course, making the argument that even if in the short term the policies may, in fact, hurt the economy, maybe in the long term they won't. Well, Donald Trump is not winning this argument. What are we talking about? Trump's tariff policies will hurt the economy. Well, in the short term, it's 72%. But even in the long term, even if it's a lower percentage, you still get the majority, 53%. The bottom line is, in this particular poll, when it comes to Trump's economic policies, I just don't see any bright spots, Jacob.
So I can anticipate President Trump when he gets polls that he doesn't like, when he hears the polls he doesn't like, he attacks the polls. It's not like they're legitimate and he's doing anything wrong or the American people are wrong. It's that the pollsters are wrong. So this is CNN's poll. What do other polls show?
You know, I remember an interview that Breonna Keeler did with Michael Cohen back in 2016. He said, what numbers, what polls? And she said, polls, all of them. And in this case, it is polls, all of them. What are we talking about here? Trump's net economic approval rating. Look at this. Negatives. Negatives across the board. CNN, 22 points underwater. CBS, 16 points underwater. Fox, 18 points underwater. The New York Times, 12 points underwater. And the ABC News Washington Post poll, 22 points underwater. It doesn't matter what poll you're looking at. If it's a scientific poll, it shows that Trump is way underwater on the economy, and it is dragging his presidency down with him, Jake.
Well, who are you going to believe, you or your lying eyes? Harry Ensign.
Well, there you go.
Thank you so much. In the politics lead, just a few hours ago, President Trump met with House Speaker Mike Johnson at the White House. The meeting came after House Republicans unveiled the first details of their sweeping bill to implement President Trump's agenda. CNN's Manu Raju is on Capitol Hill. Manu, you just spoke with Speaker Johnson. What did he have to say about his meeting with President Trump?
Yeah, this meeting was about the politics, Jake. In fact, it was about the midterms next year. And I asked him about concerns about Donald Trump's sinking approval ratings, about how majority of voters, according to not just our poll, but many polls, show that Donald Trump is slumping on the economy, is underwater on key issues, even on issues like immigration, whether or not he is worried that that could impact Republicans' razor-thin majority in the House, potentially leading it to Democrats taking the House next year. And he brushed off those concerns and contended that the GOP would be on offense in the November 2026 midterms.
I'm not worried at all. I just had a great meeting with the president at the White House, and he's in good spirits. We talked about the upcoming races, the midterm elections, and we're very bullish on it.
But why is the American public souring on his policies?
Listen, you know, these are presidential terms or roller coasters sometimes. There's been a little tumult in the markets with the tariff policy and all of that, but I think all this is settling out.
And Johnson went on to predict that the Republican bill to implement the Trump agenda would juice the economy he promised, which could change their fortunes come next November. And Jake, that part of that bill released over the weekend were details about how they would spend billions of dollars, more than $150 billion on national defense programs, as well as roughly $70 billion or so on new physical barriers along the southern border with Mexico. There are a whole host of other measures that have still not been released yet as part of the larger agenda. But Jake, they are on an aggressive timetable to try to get this done, to spawn something out of the House by Memorial Day. That could be very difficult here. And just moments ago, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was meeting with Republican leaders in the House and the Senate. They still have to resolve how to deal with the major overhaul of the United States tax code, but he did say they're closer on that front, Jake.
Is the overhaul of the tax code the only unresolved issue that could derail Speaker Johnson's plans to have this passed by Memorial Day?
That's one of the trickiest issues, Jake, but is not the only one. The other one dealing with spending cuts. The House Republicans are trying to push forward $1.5 trillion in spending cuts as part of the plan. But the question is, Jake, where do those cuts actually come from? They have promised not to impact benefits for people who are receiving them from Medicaid as well as Medicare. But can they do that? Reach that level of cuts without impacting benefits and programs that are important to voters, particularly voters in Republican districts as well, and in swing districts in particular. Those are all major questions Republicans have to resolve. Not just that, but also how to raise the national debt limit as well. This Treasury Secretary also told Republican leaders that they could make a new projection on when the U.S. economy could default if the debt limit is not raised. It could make that projection by maybe next week sometime or the week after, and that could have a big impact in determining the Republican timetable to getting this larger bill done, Jake.